Growing up, the old Victorian house on our street wasn't just a place to live, it was the heart of my childhood, the stage upon which every memory of my early years was etched. Towering gables, ivy crawling along weathered brick, and tall, arched windows gave it a sense of mystery and grandeur. To me, it felt alive, as if the walls whispered stories of those who had walked its creaking floors before us. My father had inherited the house from his parents, and to him, it was a sacred inheritance. My mother, on the other hand, wore it like a badge of honor. She delighted in reminding her friends, and sometimes even strangers, that she was the mistress of such a fine old residence. "Just look at these original hardwood floors," she would gush during her endless garden parties, her wine glass poised in one hand like a scepter. She'd sweep her arm toward the polished planks, sunlight streaming through the tall windows to illuminate the craftsmanship. Craftsmanship like this is rare these days. I was only 8 when we moved in, still young enough to be enchanted by the grandeur but old enough to sense how much the house mattered to my parents. While my mother flourished in her new role as a hostess, her laughter spilling across the manicured lawn as she entertained guests, my father became my anchor. He never seemed impatient with me, never brushed me aside. Whenever I finished a book, it was as though he had been waiting for that very moment. With a twinkle in his eye, he would pull another from behind his back or retrieve one from the shelves he had carefully filled for me. "Samantha," he would say, his voice brimming with gentle excitement as he handed me a new story, "I think you're going to love this one." And I always did. His choices were perfect, as if he could see straight into my heart. My mother, however, could never understand. She would peer at me with faint exasperation as I nestled into the window seat, legs tucked beneath me, nose buried in pages. "Samantha, sweetie," she'd sigh, her tone hovering between concern and irritation, "wouldn't you rather play outside with the other kids? Sarah from next door just got a new bike, you could ride with her." But the idea of chasing bikes in the street couldn't compare to the worlds I discovered in books. Still, I could feel her disappointment like a shadow stretching across the room. My father would notice too. From behind his newspaper, he'd lift his eyes and send me a secret wink, an unspoken reassurance that there was nothing wrong with preferring the company of words. At school, I wasn't entirely invisible. My writing for the school newspaper often drew attention, even from kids who otherwise wouldn't have noticed me. For a moment, I belonged to something larger, but once the day was over, I always returned to the sanctuary of books and stories. That sanctuary deepened whenever I visited my grandmother. Her house was quieter, steadier. The library she tended like a garden of ink and parchment became my second home. The scent of old leather and dust hung in the air, comforting rather than oppressive. She'd let me spend hours there, her only interruptions being the arrival of cookies and steaming mugs of hot chocolate. "A writer needs to read," Grandma would remind me, her voice soft but sure, as she ran her hand reverently across the worn spines of her collection. Those were my happiest years. Then came the day everything fractured. I was 13 when the knock came, a knock that seemed to split our lives into before and after. The police officer stood on the porch, hat in hand, his face solemn. My mother's coffee cup slipped from her grasp and shattered on the kitchen tile. The officer's words hung in the air like smoke. "Terrible accident." My father was gone. In the days that followed, our house felt hollow, its once vivid heart silenced. My mother wept at night, muffling her sobs into pillows. But as weeks turned into months, her grief hardened into something else. Perfume bottles began to line the vanity again, and the sight of her carefully applying lipstick in the mornings unsettled me. "Life goes on, Samantha," she told me one morning, compact mirror in one hand, her lips painted a shade too bright for breakfast. "We can't stay sad forever." I nodded, though I sensed she was speaking to herself rather than me. That morning was the quiet ending of my childhood, though I didn't realize it fully until later. When Mom met Jack at an office party, everything moved at dizzying speed. Within weeks, he was sitting at our dinner table, his belongings soon filling the closets that had once been Dad's. The courthouse wedding followed so quickly I barely had time to register what had happened. The house, once a monument to my father's legacy, now echoed with the footsteps of a stranger. Grandma, always perceptive, bristled when she first met Jack. She drew my mother into the kitchen for what she meant to be a private talk, but their raised voices carried. "Margot, you barely know this man," Grandma whispered urgently, but I heard her anyway. "Think about Samantha." "I am thinking about Samantha," my mother shot back, her tone sharp, almost defensive. "She needs a father figure." She had a father. Grandma's voice cracked with grief. and his memory deserves more respect than this. After that, Grandma wasn't welcome anymore. My mother declared that she couldn't come back until she learned to be supportive. Jack never raised a hand against me, but his presence pushed me into the margins of my own life. He turned up the television when I tried to read, grumbled about the mess when I did homework at the table, and, most cruel of all, boxed up my father's photos in front of me. My mother stood by silently, her face unreadable, as if she had already chosen where her loyalties lay. "That money isn't yours to spend," I said, my words slicing through the heavy silence. "Dad worked overtime for years to save that money. He wanted me to go to college." The color rose in Mom's cheeks, her face burning red as if my defiance had struck her physically. She straightened her shoulders, clinging to her anger like armor. "How dare you be so selfish," she snapped. "Your sister needs." "Freya is your daughter with Jack," I interrupted, my tone harder than I'd ever used with her. "That money was for me, Dad's daughter, or have you forgotten that?" The words hung in the air, sharp and unrelenting. Jack's hands slammed against the table with a force that made the dishes rattle and the water glasses tremble, his face twisted with rage. "I've had enough of your attitude, young lady," he barked. "Your mother and I have put up with your ingratitude for years. It's time she made a choice. Either you start showing some respect or what?" I shot back, my heart pounding, but I refused to flinch. For a moment, silence stretched between us, taut and suffocating. Then Mom pushed herself up from her chair. Slowly, deliberately, she placed one hand on her rounded belly, the other braced on the table, as though steadying herself for what she was about to say. "Or you can leave," she said. Her voice was steady, but it cut colder than any blade. The room tilted. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. "Leave," I repeated, the word catching in my throat. "This is my house, Dad's house, actually." Mom's expression hardened to ice. "Since your father didn't leave a will, the house legally belongs to me, and you're 19 now, an adult. I'm no longer required to provide for you." I stared at her, stunned. My mind reeled with memories, her hands packing heart-shaped sandwiches for my school lunches, her gentle voice singing to me when I had a fever, her fingers combing through my hair as I cried after Dad's funeral. Those images collided violently with the woman now standing before me, a stranger in my mother's skin. "You can't be serious," I whispered. But she didn't argue. She simply walked to the front door, her steps measured, her back straight. She pulled it open, and the cool spring evening spilled into the house. The air smelled of blooming lilacs, Dad's favorite. The scent felt like a cruel reminder, as though he were present only in the flowers outside, powerless to intervene. "Get out," she said flatly. The words broke something inside me. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, as if a hidden lock within me had clicked open, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Without answering, I turned and walked down the narrow stairs to my basement room. My hands moved mechanically as I packed clothes, notebooks, my journals, and, above all, my books. They were the only possessions I truly cared about, the only things that had ever felt like mine. Above me, I could hear Freya's small, confused voice drifting through the air vents. "Mommy, what's happening?" Her words were muffled by Jack's gruff response. I strained to hear my mother's voice, but there was only silence. 15 minutes later, I stood at the doorway of the house I had grown up in, 2 duffel bags slung over my shoulders and a backpack weighing down my spine. I didn't take a last look at the dining room, or the staircase, or the window seat where I had once curled up with my books. To look back would have been unbearable. The evening air wrapped around me as I stepped outside. I closed the door gently behind me, the sound quiet but final. When I reached Grandma's porch, she was already there, as if she had been waiting. The light from her hallway spilled onto the steps, and before I could even knock, she opened the door wide. One look at my face and she understood everything. No questions, no hesitation. She pulled me into her arms, her embrace fierce and unyielding. I buried my face against her shoulder, and for the first time since Dad's death, I let the tears come, hot and unstoppable. When the sobs finally subsided into shuddering breaths, Grandma guided me to the sofa, pressing a warm blanket around my shoulders. Her face was lined with fury, but her voice, when she spoke, was calm and steady. "You'll stay here, of course," she said firmly, her eyes locking on mine. "This is your home now." I shook my head, ashamed. "I don't know if I can even afford college anymore, without Dad's savings." Grandma cut me off with a squeeze of my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Don't you worry about that," she said. "Whatever the scholarship doesn't cover, I will. Your father worked too hard, and you've come too far for your dreams to die because of this situation." Her voice trembled only once, when she spoke of Dad, but her determination wrapped around me like armor. For the first time that night, I allowed myself to believe I wasn't entirely lost. Soon, she began sending me to my room whenever Jack came home. "Honey, Jack's had a long day," she'd explain, as though his peace mattered more than my existence. When she became pregnant, the shift was complete. My father's office, once a sacred space filled with books and quiet memories, was transformed into a nursery. Paint swatches and baby clothes filled the house, drowning out everything that had come before. And then Freya was born. From the moment she arrived, she was the axis around which our household spun. One afternoon, desperate for some acknowledgement, I approached Mom as she fed the baby. "Mom, none of my clothes fit anymore," I said cautiously. "I need new ones for school." She looked at me as if I'd made an unreasonable demand. "Samantha, do you have any idea how expensive babies are? We just bought Freya a new crib." "But Mom, my jeans are all too short." "For God's sake, Margot," Jack interrupted from behind his newspaper, not even looking up. "The girl acts like we're made of money." Mom sighed, almost theatrically, as though the weight of my request were too much to bear. "We'll go to the discount store this weekend, but this is the last time. Samantha, you're getting too expensive to maintain." The word stung sharper than any slap could have. Too expensive to maintain, as though I were nothing more than a burden, a bill to be managed. I glanced at Freya, nestled in her designer onesie, surrounded by new toys, and felt something harden in me. For the first time, I looked at my little sister not with wonder, but with resentment. I stood up so quickly that my chair clattered against the floor, the sound echoing through the dining room like a gunshot. My hands trembled, but my voice came out sharp, stronger than I expected.